Did it.
We'll go ahead and get started and call this meeting to order. I will start with the invocation. Father, thank you so much for allowing us citizens to serve the community through the Economic Improvement Corporation. Let us ever be mindful of you in the decisions that we make. For it's in your name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Item number 1 on the agenda is the Visitor Citizens Forum. Any citizen with business not scheduled on the agenda may speak to the Economic Improvement Corporation. No deliberation or action can be taken on these items because the Open Meetings Act requires an item be posted on an agenda 72 hours before the meeting. Visitors are asked to limit their presentation to 3 minutes. Do I have any visitors that wish to speak today? All right, I see none. Let's move on to item number 2, which is approval of the minutes. They are in your packet starting on page 5.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Have a motion to approve.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. And that is approved unanimously. All right, item number 3, which are our monthly reports, and starting with financials. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I am Julie Smith, and I'm standing in for Amy today.
Hey,
so
Julie.
hopefully I can take care of you guys. So if you'll both first refer to page 12, which is your statement of activities, you'll see that sales tax is still looking very good. $266,024 in March of 2019, which is an increase of 9.9%. There were some out-of-period adjustments in there, which is pretty typical, but even with those, we were still 7.3% ahead of last year, which is really good. Still trending the highest in our 2 largest sales tax categories, which is retail, trade, and food, so we feel good about that. Interest income for the month, $8,920, which comes entirely from EIC's tax pool investments, and that as of April 10th, we were sitting about 2.58, which the trend right now is within a couple of basis points, so the interest rate seems to be holding pretty steady, which is a good thing. Expenditures for the month included $142,682. That was budgeted transfers for debt services and the usual administrative service fee. Also, we had a $35,000 quarterly payment to the Kerrville Economic Development Corporation. If you move to the project fund activity, which is on page 14, you'll see that the project fund transferred the agreed $750,000 to the city's general capital projects fund. That was the first payment to the River Trail extension to Schreiner. Also paid was the H.L. Kerr $375,000. That work has been completed and inspected, and that was per that funding agreement as well. And finally, EIC received $367,132 transfer from the city's general capital projects fund, and this represents the difference between the $350,000 downtown streetscape project and some amounts that were transferred in prior years.
Okay.
Any questions I can answer for you?
Questions?
I'm not sure I quite understand the streetscape.
Well,
thing.
I can explain that as best I can. So,
Yeah, I want to hear that.
it's really not confusing. It's just an accounting thing, really. So back in 2013, the EIC was paying Peter Lewis directly for some expenses related to the initial downtown streetscape project, and then we had an audit, and when BKD, those expenses should have been an asset of the city since EIC doesn't have assets. And so when that money was transferred, the entire project was transferred instead of only the expenses. So we're just transferring back the portion that wasn't used for that project.
So that's money coming in.
Correct.
And then
Like an over budget almost?
Not really. It was money that was set aside for that downtown streetscape, but it was being spent directly from EIC, which really it should have been being
Okay,
spent.
should have been transferred.
Correct. We should have transferred, instead of you guys paying Peter Lewis directly, that should have been paid out of the city funds. So it should have been a transfer and then a payment so that the assets were just booked in the right place. So really it's just basically moving money to the correct fund.
okay, so the money ended up, is that the same 367,132 that's now in the business development with EIC contribution?
It's within that project still with the downtown streetscape. It's just
How
going
we
back
got
to
into the
the
business development.
transferred back.
It-
When it came back from the city fund to the remainder balance.
So it went into the project fund balance under the business development.
And we can move it to whatever.
Oh, no, I'm just
Right.
saying that's the same 367.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Okay, I got one more question, well, maybe more than one more question.
Okay.
So, on the river trail, we put 375 in February, I think, into the fund.
Okay.
And now we have 750 in there, so apparently we did 375 also in March, but it doesn't show 375 in March.
Well, we did a transfer of $750,000 in March that was for the half of that project. Can you speak to February's?
Oh, but in the report we had last month, it was 375.
We'll see if EA can speak to that, if he has that report.
Are we looking
I
at,
don't
are we
have
looking at,
February's
page 9, quality of life, Schreiner River Trail, that line there under?
On the operating fund statement,
Correct.
Yeah, 375 under the tennis center there, yeah,
well, under the river trail,
yeah, I mean, yeah.
I asked Amy about this
uh,
earlier.
get back to that
I've got it from last
here,
month.
but last month we showed we moved 375, and we show nothing this month.
Because this month it was just it was a transfer, am I correct about that?
Well, that's what it was last month, wasn't it, with the transfer?
And unfortunately, I don't have February's statement with me, but I can find that answer out.
Here.
Statement's right here.
Yeah, I've got it too, yeah, I've got February. 375 in February and March, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it looks like,
you
because
wanna
now
know-
we got,
You wanna know exactly where we are with.
yeah, because
Schreiner.
in February, and the fund was 0 here on the report, but now it's 750. Like we must have put it all in this month, but it shows nothing for this month, but 375 last month. So those numbers aren't really.
Okay, let me find out about that, and I'll definitely get you a very distinct answer on that, because
Okay.
I don't wanna speak out of turn on that.
No.
Is it possible that in February it has year-to-date, it has the 375 in March, but in the February, it has current period 375, and then they moved it year-to-date 375, so it looks like maybe they just picked up that year-to-date 375 from February, and it's showing up again in March. In other words, just is that?
I don't know. He just anyway, it doesn't really flow.
The operating, the statement of activities on page 12
This
is
is
actually.
February,
Right.
and then.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's
Well, it's
just.
still
it's just-
375. They didn't put any more in there.
Right.
But on the,
Here.
over here now, they got
750.
750.
they got
750
750.
transferred in, yeah.
Yeah, but it's only showing
Yeah,
375
For
once.
year-to-date, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So, that was
And you're
one.
referring to two different pages, right? Page
Right.
12 and then page 14? Okay, because page 12 is actually the operating, so Fund 40,
But the money comes out of there, right?
correct,
And-
correct.
But it only came out 375.
Right.
That shows.
And then, but the transfer has already been done for the 750, I guess, for upcoming expenses, is that what you would understand? Okay.
So we,
And I'll get you a definite
because
answer on that.
that's, yeah, but it doesn't show where the other 375 got transferred.
Okay,
We'll double check it.
I'll double check that February statement
And so, but now we've actually advanced 750,
correct.
and so they've already spent that much money.
It's transferred into the project fund. So that'll be, we're expending, as you recall, we're expending engineering dollars right now. But we've not expended
Well,
$750,000.
this shows that the funding was transferred to the project, 750.
Correct.
right.
It's in the project fund,
But this is what's to the fund over here, and this,
Right.
this far column is what's in the fund.
yes, that's what's
This
in the
like,
fund,
this,
and then.
this money's gone.
No, sir. It's transferred into the fund, which means it's sitting in that project waiting to be spent. It doesn't necessarily mean that all that money has been spent. So the operating
Not that's what
statement,
these two columns were. So we got the project description, we got the total EIC contribution,
Mm-hmm.
then funding transferred, and then the funding transferred to EIC. So we did this. On the far right is how much has been transferred into, and then the middle column is what we've spent. is the way I took it. And maybe that's not right.
Really like a holding fund until.
Right.
Right, so which
Right.
column is the holding fund
The
and which
holding-
column is what's been spent?
The holding column is gonna be the funding, so when we transfer money.
But
in-
both of them start funding, so which one?
The middle, the
The
fund.
middle one or the right-hand column or the middle column?
Can you help me with that one? Because page 12.
We only ask these questions when Amy's not here.
Oh, that's-
We noticed that.
And it, we could, I can talk to Amy later.
Well,
I mean,
some-
No,
it's
it's
not like-
fine, it's a valid question, but the page 12 is gonna be your expenditures.
I don't have page numbers.
Okay.
I'm just trying
Statement
to,
of
so we've
activities.
got 3,017,017
So the difference.
in the fund. That's how much money we haven't spent, and that balances with the number up here, which is fine. So this
Right.
must be the money we have not spent.
Correct.
That's right.
So the middle column must be what we have spent.
It's, well, define how spent, right? So the far right column is when it has been designated within your EIC project funds, okay?
No, the left column
actually-
here is,
the
I mean,
middle-
the left column is the one that we've committed this much money.
Correct.
That's correct. The far right is the commitment, when it actually moves to the project, when it moves over to the city, to be issued to somebody, that's that middle column.
Okay, and so that 750 has been moved over to the city.
Yes.
That's correct.
It's not in the fund anymore,
That's correct.
but it hadn't been spent yet.
That's
But
correct.
the city's got it.
That's
right.
correct.
That's
It's
right.
been moved from EIC to the project fund within the city's.
And so we
books.
give the city the money before they spend it.
Correct.
We're trusting you guys to hold
Yes.
it.
So let me ask you this.
And then for the agreement, when it doesn't get spent, we issue
We
it back.
move it back.
Yes. So
We
But
approve,
why do you do that? If it's not being spent yet, why do you move it?
because we have a contract that has, usually those contracts are directly with the city, so we have to make sure that those funds are accounted for
And they are accounted for, we have them sitting right here, right?
Well, it just matters whether there's interest being made on the account within the EIC or whether it's the account being making interest within the city.
Or
Okay,
if work's already
well, it just seems
begun
like,
and we
okay, we,
anticipate
so
expenditures.
we approved this in, December, do you remember? January, December?
this fiscal year anyway.
Well, since October, it was, right, so sometime between October 1st and today, there was another 375,000 put in, we just don't know when. Okay,
Well, it wasn't put in before February,
Well,
because
that-
it was at least by the February.
well, that's what I'm saying, I think they missed one between then and
Well, they
February.
did, that's my point.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
And I'll find out that answer for you. I'll go back to that other statements and look and get you that answer.
Okay, so so we spent the money on the HL Kerr agreement,
Correct.
so they've been reimbursed for their expenses.
Yes, sir.
And it seemed like I had a question, that's the rest of that. So we moved, we spent that money then, well, when it,
I think it'd make more sense to change, flip-flop the columns.
Yeah.
Put funding,
well, I don't, it makes perfect sense to me, I thought I understood it, and that's right, so, no, I had one other question before I let you go. So we're not funding the business development on time, so we're delayed doing that, we've only done 25% of it so far this year. And so we're not keeping up, putting that money in there.
They're not necessarily equal across the year. It really just depends on when other projects or other categories may need to be funded. Because there isn't any specific business development element necessarily, so it's.
It seemed like some of these things we're kind of doing it on a, regular basis to, just budgeting it.
Yeah, some of it's a cash flow issue, right, across the year.
And we're paid ahead then really on the KEDC because we've only got one quarter left and we got 2 quarters in the calendar left, but we paid 3 of the quarters in the first 2 quarters.
Yes, sir, there would have been one probably right at October 1, and then one that would have occurred right at the beginning of the year.
So anyway, all right. So So for budget purposes, we had several things that weren't on the budget. To start the year, I don't think so that we didn't budget for the HL Kerr, we didn't budget for the tennis, and we didn't budget for the trail. And already, so we spent $1 million really, that wasn't budgeted. Does that impact us in any way about where we're going? I mean, I haven't really worked it all out, but this is kind of like.
That's right.
Any other questions?
Anything else?
Yeah, I won't even bring it up because now I'm very confused because
Let me
because
give
in
you an answer
February,
on
wait a
that
minute, because in
375.
February, 28th, there was 750,000 funding transferred to EIC project fund, and so now it's blank for this month, but it has been moved over to the project fund. Okay, so I see.
For the river trail, yes.
Yeah, it just didn't. The other 375 didn't show up somewhere.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
375.
Okay.
I'll get that answer for you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome.
All right, we'll move on to item 3B, which is our projects update. EA?
Okay. River Trail extension to Schreiner University. As we went through before, we are moving along on that project. We're about at approximately 50% design. We've done a rough layout. We have been in contact with property owners on that, so things are moving along. We actually have a meeting with Schreiner University this week to go over both our preliminary layout as well as what their internal components are that are part of the requirements of that agreement, and kind of what their timeframes are, so we can make sure that those match up and align as we move forward. Tennis Center improvements, if you've been over there, you'll see there's a lot of construction activity going on. They've got it fenced off. We've shifted some of the usable fields around, courts around, to minimize the disruption, but it will be, there will be some disruption over there while that's ensuing. We're trying to race that forward so we can at least have a little bit of play towards the back end of the summer or fall time frame. So excited to have that project mobilized and moving forward. Aquatic's feasibility study, as you recall from last month, we did hit the pause button to do the forensic analysis of the shell. We quickly drained that and did a full scan, utilizing some technology that can penetrate, radar technology can penetrate down into that shell. We were able to ascertain a couple cracks within that facility, but overall it's in pretty good shape for a 50-year-old pool shell. So we were able to quickly deploy some repair techniques to be able to refill that and have that ready to go for this season. But that has provided us some guidance on the useful life, and so we're waiting on that report to come back, which will indicate within the greater feasibility analysis and how everyone wants to proceed with that. Legion Lift Station, if you've been over to Loop 534 and Highway 27, that project is progressing. We've got lots of big equipment over there digging a big hole, so we're excited about that one moving forward. Reuse distribution lines, as I indicated to you last month, that is going through the administrative approval process for the application for disaster recovery funds with the Texas Water Development Board and TCEQ. So that is still in process. Nothing ever really seems to move very fast in Austin, so we're continuing to track on that closely.
Oh, as far as any liability for the failure of where you were still researching where that goes.
We have initiated the forensic analysis of the destruction that occurred at that site, and so that's happening in parallel to our application for the renewal of that project. So those are all.
So you have some kind of engineering firm that comes in.
That's right.
Fill that out.
Yes, sir. Exactly.
Is that having any impact on delivering effluent around to all the places that we have on the plan?
Not right now. It could have an impact in a very high use situation when we get into like an August time frame if we have users all calling for it at the same time. But right now, we've been blessed with good rain, and so we're not having a peak demand situation as far as folks calling for it. Hobby Lobby, we're excited to say that is very much on track. They are ready to deliver that site, and that's actually imminent today or tomorrow, as that they hand the keys over for Hobby Lobby to pick it up and start going vertical. So we anticipate Hobby Lobby opening their doors in the September timeframe if everything continues to stay on track, weather dependent, of course. And then Thompson Spur 98 infrastructure extension, honing in on that project. They have gotten most of the easements and alignments of that project ready to go, so they are just about ready to issue the project for construction. We're excited. They think that's probably a 6 to 9 month process of getting that infrastructure in the ground. And they're also doing a lot of their internal site work, our understanding as far as streets and other internal improvements. So they should have some very marketable properties ready to go, hopefully in about 9 months or so. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Okay, thank you, Yi. All right, item 3C is the monthly update from Kerr Economic Development Corporation. Gil?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, have successfully, or at least officially completed my 4 months here in Kerrville, now moving into my 5th month. I've wrapped up the immersion phase of me being here, which is basically meeting with as many community stakeholders and leadership as possible, more than 200 in the first 3 months that I was here. And now moving into the inventory phase. The inventory phase is basically from here on to the next 2 to 3 months is looking at all the different community assets, our internal organizational processes, our marketing, collateral material, incentives, policies, procedures, so on and so forth. Once I'm done with that, then we start moving into the strategy and development phase, which is going to be this summer, moving into the fall. And that includes the recruitment, local expansion, and then we can start getting to the marketing and promotion of Kerrville as a place or a destination for investment. In the interim, I'm working on the development of a new website. We've already worked on the initial layout and structure of the website. We've engaged a national firm that specializes on economic development websites, so we will be launching that in June. And mind you, it's going to be a fairly simple website that just gives the information that site selectors need from the get-go. We're also working on our collateral material, that's fact sheets, our photo banks, and what have you. We've engaged a local firm that is Alaris to help us developing that material. I'm also working on the inventory, and you're going to hear that word a lot, your inventory, on our available lots of real estate here in the city and in the county. It goes from shovel-ready residential individual lots all the way to the larger tracts of land that are either shovel-ready or identified as a potential for areas for industrial use or advanced manufacturing. I'm also working with the city manager's office in the alignment, or I like to say the alignment of incentives. The incentives right now is kind of like all over the place, so we're grabbing them and giving them some shape and form. And again, looking at all the different programs, the flows and the processes of each of these programs, and then working on an incentives business guide. So we currently have a incentives policy that was created about 10 years ago. It's a little outdated, so we're grabbing that and revising that for today's needs, specifically for what site selectors and the corporate executives are looking for. I'm also doing, again, an inventory on workforce training programs, met with the workforce solutions here in Kerrville, looking at how we can support and develop some of their programs, also identifying gaps in our local labor force. Something else that we're working on internally is developing our BRE program. BRE is acronym for Business Retention and Expansion. So we're looking at, again, our top 10 employers. We've already met with 8 of our top 10 employers, and all of them, except for one, are adding jobs. So I'll come back to that here in a bit. I'm going to take a step back and look at an economic development organization. The better economic development organizations have a strong business retention and expansion program. There's usually 4 divisions in economic development. That's marketing and communication, your research and strategy, corporate recruitment, and then your BRE. An EDO needs to understand and have the pulse of the local economy, and you do that by meeting with your top employers and then with your small businesses as well. You need to understand what their local employment base is like and what are the needs that these employers have. And the reason you do this is, one, you want to be able to say that you're open for business. So here's something that site selectors do. When site selectors are looking at different communities, the first thing they'll ask for is, give me your list of top 10 employers. From there, private employers, excludes the government and education. From there, they'll figure out, okay, I know what this community, what the fabric of this community is, what the skill set of the employee base is. The other thing they do is, once you get to the point, or the site selector gets to a point that they've shortlisted 4 to 6 communities, the site selector will start calling the plant managers of those local communities, because what they're trying to do, they're trying to start cutting cities off the list to shorten it to 3 that they're going to visit. So they start calling plant managers, and the ones that come back and they'll ask, we're asking you to give us feedback about your local workforce, but we want to know what the relationship with the local economic development organization is like, and we want to know what the relationship with your community leadership is like. When they get back, you know, feedback from some of these plant managers, even if it's like, well, it's non-existent, we don't talk to those guys, they'll cut you off the list. So it's very important. The better EDOs have a business retention expansion program, and that's the core of their program. So that's what we're developing right now. Again, we've met with 8 of those top 10 employers. Save the date, we have we've already scheduled a stakeholder board retreat. I think you all have already received the save the date. That's confirmed for Tuesday, May 21st, 8:30 a.m., 8:30 to 11. And we've got 2 individuals that are going to be visiting us. The facilitator for that is going to be Tracy McDaniel. She's a very highly regarded economic development practitioner. She's worked for 4 different governors, 3 in Texas and 1 in New Jersey. Now she's back and she's doing consulting on her own. And we've been fortunate enough to be able to engage her to come into our community and facilitate the board retreat and start working on our strategic plan as it pertains to the 2050 Comprehensive Plan Economic Development section. We're also going to have a site selector that's going to be coming in. And that is Andy Shapiro. He's one of the leading site selectors in the country. He's originally from the New York, New Jersey area. Now I think he's in San Francisco. He's also the chair and one of the founders of the Site Selectors Guild. So he's a big deal. So he'll be coming into Kerrville for about a day and a half, almost 2 days. We'll have him as taking a tour of the city, meeting with a couple of the plants. Hence, that's where our BREE program comes into play. And then we'll have the stakeholder retreat the following day, which is Tuesday. And we're going to be asking for input from both the KEDC board as well as the EIC board. So we're going to have that as a interagency board retreat, if I can use that term. And also, once we're at the retreat, the site selector is going to be giving us his opinion on the tour that we've given him in the city. So that's going to be very valuable for us. Wrapping up here, in June we're looking at creating, or we're planning for an economic development workforce forum. We don't know what's going to be called yet. We've got the Texas Workforce Commissioner Julian Alvarez. He's already confirmed for the event. He's going to be coming in to be our guest speaker, following up with the 2050 plan. This is going to be an event or a platform for the EDC to provide the results from our board retreat. Also an update on economic development to the community, as well as reporting on any current developments. And also we're going to have a sign-in event, very similar to what you would see with college athletes when they sign for a particular professional team. They usually have a signing ceremony. Well, we're going to have that for our local workforce. We're looking at 8 to 10 individuals, recent graduates from either Tybee, Alamo Colleges, or Schreiner that have gotten hired by one of our local employers, and have that signing ceremony for them, again, to show that there's activity on the workforce side. And again, we're working on developing our own talent. So in closing here, I was part of the Mayor's Housing Task Force meeting last week briefly for about 10 minutes. And just provided a quick snapshot while I was there. And I'll provide that right now, which is, well, obviously we all know there's a very small inventory of homes because I'm looking for my home myself, right? But we took it a step further. So we asked some of the people in our office to do some research. An unscientific survey. We found that there's 2,100 apartment units. And that could be a unit, ranging from a suite to a 1-bedroom to a 3-4 bedroom within our city limits. Of those, this was 2 weeks ago, so it's probably changed, but nonetheless, of those, there's only 4 units available in the city. Myself, when I came in for almost 5 months ago, I was on a waiting list for 40 days until I got basically a 400 square foot suite garage. So that shows the severity of the situation that we're in right now. You just heard I met with 8 of the top 10 employers. All of them, except for 1, are looking to add jobs before the end of the year. And once I did the tally, obviously the state hospital is one of them. Peterson's going to be adding. There's two other ones which I can't disclose yet. We're at about 400 plus jobs that are going to be coming online this fall. And we're looking at our housing situation where we're at as far as inventory is low. We don't have apartment units. We'll take it a step further. Now we start looking at salaries. Between those 400 plus jobs, we're looking at $25 to $35 million in annual salaries that are not going to be living in this community. That is a lot of disposable income that is leaving our community, that if you start to connect the dots, that is the disposable income that drives small business. You know, start talking about revitalizing downtown, that's where that money's going to come from. So, to further complicate things, I started asking, okay, so where the people that want to move into this community? We started pulling up data as far as relocation packets. The majority of people that are looking to relocate outside of the state of Texas into this community, they're coming in from the West Coast. And the bulk, vast majority of those are coming in from California. And we all know that they'll pay top dollar for anything that's available here because it's half the price of what they used to pay in California. So that kind of throws just another wrench and further complicates where we're at right now. So as far as recruitment and working to grow this community along the lines of economic development, working to create homes for the middle class workforce that they can attain is part of economic development. So I'll leave you with that we are in a position where we're growing and we don't have the space for people. Any questions?
How many, I was curious, how many of the from California or from the West Coast that you indicated might be coming this way are retirees? Do you have a breakdown on that as opposed to younger people?
That is a good question. I do not have the answer to that, but I will find out and get back to you, if not before the meeting, by next meeting.
But at any rate, they're looking for housing space, and we don't have it. So, I know it's part of the 2050 plan. I don't know how far along we are on that part of the plan or where we're beginning to go, but it'd be interesting to kind of, I don't know. Obviously, we got money set aside to try to help with that. Right. I mean, we've been, so, nobody's bringing us any projects.
We're going to be a part of the solution, and this task force is going to help us in that regard.
And so I'm serving on the task force, and Sherry's leading this. So I think Mark asked Sherry to maybe speak to that real quick.
Good evening, or afternoon, I guess. I'm Sherry Mosier, the manager for strategic initiatives, and we conducted our first workforce task force meeting last week, and we have received a proposal from a consultant. The name of the firm is CDS. They're based out of Houston, and they do housing studies and plans all over Texas. And so the task force reviewed the proposal. It looks to be in check, and so we've got the city attorney looking at it right now. And the plan is to go ahead and engage that firm. And so they'll be doing a market analysis. They'll look at where the employees are coming from. They'll also be talking to the various employers about their housing needs. And then they'll pull all the information together, and they'll put together a housing plan for us with an implementation process. So, sorry.
So that helps to attract some developer to do something then.
Right, and so once we get that housing plan in place, the idea is to get that out on the street. And I've already talked to the folks at Metro Study about our situation, and they're going to help us get that out on the street. And then I have contacts of my own that will be getting out there. And then we're also looking at issuing the workforce housing RFP again this summer. So, do you have any additional questions?
Questions? All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Gil. All right, moving on to item number 4, which is a public hearing. And I will go ahead and open that public hearing. It is 4:34. The public hearing is for a project funding agreement between the City of Kerrville, Texas Economic Improvement Corporation and the City of Kerrville, Texas for the construction project to extend the Olympic Drive and wastewater services in that same area. So, EA, you have the floor.
Yes. We're going to quickly go through this presentation, very similar to what we presented last month, so we're going to kind of fly through it here. Essentially, this was an item that was identified in Kerrville 2050 within economic development, essentially supporting infrastructure that's necessary to accommodate future growth of housing and business. Specifically, this extension of Olympic Drive was part of the recently updated Master Thoroughfare Plan. The project does consist of approximately 2,600 linear feet of new roadway surface and curbing, sidewalk extension, pedestrian crossing enhancements, extension of sewer service, and then the design engineering. Roughly, preliminary early engineers' estimates are an estimate of about 2.25. So this EIC request is for 50,000 over 1 million. This gives you just a little bit of an aerial indication of the location. As you can see there, indicated in red, the terminus on the far left side is the existing terminus of Olympic as it goes down the hill and then extends to the existing traffic signal across from right in the front of Tybee High School. The property to the south of that existing right-of-way is the roughly 32 acres that is owned by the city and is being marketed for development. The property directly across from that is the 35 acres that was recently purchased by Kerrville Independent School District and is actively being planned for the new middle school site. And then to the left, a little pie shape that then expands around what will be the new KISD property is another 200 acres that is actively being marketed for development by Schreiner University as they look to capitalize that endowment, which is why they own that land. So again, the driver on the timing for this project is certainly the new middle school, but the investment in the infrastructure is really precipitated by those other two parcels, which are being actively marketed for business growth, housing growth, and general economic development purposes in the community, which is where EIC comes in. This is a very rough early design piece, just again showing how that would lay out across that piece of property. This was an item that was identified within the interior of Strategic Catalyst Area 8 within the Kerrville 2050 Comprehensive Plan. You can see this is an indication of the Master Thoroughfare Plan and how that preliminary alignment lays out across there. Again, just showing basically the extension from the existing Olympic to 534. Next steps, we did go to council to get permission to come to you on March 12th. We did present this item to you on March 18th. The EIC unanimously voted to draft a project funding agreement and set the public hearing date, which brings us to today. Should you want to move forward today, we would anticipate putting this on next week's calendar for the City Council, where they would also be looking at the design engineering contract and the KISD development agreement. Essentially, this would be a two-party agreement between EIC and the city, and then we would have a subsequent agreement between the city and KISD to run the construction project for them. They're on their portion. They are essentially acting as the developer in the requirement to develop their 50% of the streetway infrastructure and the roughly 80% of the wastewater infrastructure. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
First, in light of our budget, how do we fund this?
Mm-hmm. So
what's the timing of the funding, I guess, is really my question.
Yes, sir. So we do have some flexibility in that. We would anticipate going through the design engineering process here over the next, 3 to 6 months, and then, anticipate letting a project possibly, it'll be right there on the cusp of the new fiscal year. The EIC has a healthy fund balance, so we can work that in a number of ways if we want to, split that up or have that all as one piece. I think right now we're anticipating really having it all come over as one chunk, but we can do that how we need to.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I noticed there's like a 25%, I guess that's kind of standard contingency.
Yes, sir.
Is that prorated half to us and half to KISD, or is it because they have more expense and other interest that it would be a different, ratio.
So,
If they didn't spend it all, would it come back 50/50 to?
it will come back in the ratio that, because
That
there
it
are
goes
two
in.
different ratios, so it's 50/50 essentially on the roadway and the sidewalk infrastructure that's, what I would call the above surface infrastructure is 50/50. So if there's a, whatever the balance is at the end of the project, it will come back in that same ratio. On the wastewater side, it's an 80/20
Right.
rough split, and so on that piece, if it comes back in a different way, it'll be split on that 80/20.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? All right, do I have any members of the audience that would like to speak on this project? I see none. So I will close the public hearing. It is 4:41. I'll open the floor for discussion from us. Any discussion?
Is it a good deal?
I think it is.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
That, you know, it's good, I think it's part of the, really the plan, everything, it fits everything we should be doing, I think, so.
I agree with that. So I would be looking for a motion.
I'll move to accept this, I don't know how the wording
Approve
is.
the funding agreement.
Funding agreement.
All right, we have a motion to approve. I need
Let me have the privilege of seconding.
You want to second that? All right, any further
Robert?
discussion?
Put the target on my back.
All those in favor of approval, raise your right hand. And that is approved unanimously. Thank you very much.
Lord.
All right, item number 5 is consideration and possible action for designating June 16th, our regular EIC meeting, as our annual meeting. So I suppose that this kind of flows along with the date discussions we've been having. That would require us to designate that with a vote. Would that be correct?
Yes, sir. Per your bylaws, that is actually designated for June 1st. We never historically have not met on June 1st as the regular annual meeting. However, within the bylaws, it does give the group the power to adjust that date. We would recommend, as we did last month, on you shifting that to your regular June meeting date, if that is your desire.
All right, any discussion on that?
So, my calendar says 16th is Sunday.
That would be a problem.
That would be a
Am I
problem.
looking at
I
something wrong?
won't be here for that one. Let's make sure we have the right date.
We've got us down for the
It would
17th.
actually be the 17th.
Okay, very good. Well, if you could just include that within your motion, that would be great.
Okay.
So I move we have the annual meeting this year on June the 17th at our regularly scheduled meeting time.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. That motion carries unanimously. All right, executive session. We have nothing for executive session today. Any of you have any reason to go into executive session? I see none. So, any discussion about future agenda items, any of that? None? You want to bring us up?
Well, you will be getting an email this evening, just
Okay.
as an update. There was a question about, not a question, some money that you guys had set aside that wasn't really specifically earmarked for a project, and part of that was part of the movement. That's why it's in pieces like that.
Okay,
And so we'll be sending you out an email that gives you exact specifics of where that came from.
thank you very much. All right. Anything else? We are adjourned. It's 4:44.